Illusionary Mask is a pretty hilarious card, so let's talk about this bad boy. Illusionary Mask is a poly artifact that costs 2 mana to cast. Now, poly artifact is an obsolete term that was used before the tap symbol existed to inform you that you didn't need to tap this card to activate it. A bit confusing, I suppose, but they stopped using these terms after the tap symbol was introduced and revised. Anyway, the card effect is the real confusing part, so let's get started with the original text. Pay X generic mana. You can summon a creature face down so opponent doesn't know what it is. The X cost can be any amount of mana, even 0. It serves to hide the true casting cost of the creature, which you still have to spend. As soon as a face-down creature receives damage, deals damage, or is tapped, you must turn it face up. Okay, so that's a lot to unpack. And normally, if a card was this confusing, I'd just head right over to the errata, but there have been some major rules changes that have affected this card in confusing ways, so let's go over the original intention of the card first. I'd also just like to point out here quick that this is kind of really interesting, because the card, the way that the ruling works is it like explains the intention to you, not so much like the rules interactions, which is just kind of interesting. Anyway, the original intention of this card is when this card is in play, you can cast a creature. Instead of paying the mana cost, you pay X mana into this artifact and then put that card into play. The point and intention of this card is to mask what you've played, right? So this card is worded weirdly because it says the amount can be 0, but you do still need to pay the full mana cost of the card. So, like, just as an example quick, if you had a Grey Ogre but didn't want me to know that you had a Grey Ogre, you could tap a Soul Ring and a Mountain, then put it face down. But you still need to pay at least the mana cost. If you just pay 2 in a red, there's a decent chance I can figure out, around about what you put down. But you could instead tap a Soul Ring, a Mountain, and 2 islands, and now I might think it's a pirate ship or something. That is very stupid, and it's not a strong effect. It's also kind of pointless the way it works, because this would be kind of interesting if they didn't know what the creature was when declaring blockers, but you have to tap to attack, so the creature is revealed before the blocker stage. I guess Sarah Angel wouldn't flip over until the damage stage in the early iterations of the rules, but it's pretty easy to narrow down which vigilance creature is attacking you when the game only has 1 vigilance creature. This card is bad. I just want to be very clear on that. This card provides basically 0 value. I mean, I guess you could use it as a mana sink, specifically when casting creatures, if you have like 4 mana flares in play or something. And are playing with mana burn, otherwise even that is useless. But yeah, this card doesn't really doesn't do anything to affect the game, despite saying a lot of words. This card lets you pay more mana for a creature and put it face down. Then when you do anything with it, you have to flip it face up. Neat. This is one of those cards that's very obviously a flavor-first design, and I always find these cards really fun to think about. This one is particularly wild, and while its effect hasn't changed much, the game around it has. Morph is an interesting mechanic that first appeared in Onslaught, and a fun little fact about Morph is that it owes its existence to Illusionary Mask and Camouflage. Another card we'll have to discuss at some point. Anyway, Morph was used as an excuse to give better rules text to face-down cards. Nowadays, in most scenarios, face-down cards are colorless creatures with power and toughness of 2. So, after they came up with the idea to make all face-down creatures 2/2s that are colorless, a lot of things around Illusionary Mask changed. Let's take a look at the errata for this card. Pay X generic. You may choose a creature card in your hand whose mana cost could be paid by some amount of, or all of, the mana you spent on X. If you do, you may cast that card face down as a 2/2 creature spell without paying its mana cost. If the creature that spell becomes as it resolves has not been turned face up and would assign or deal damage, be dealt damage, or become tapped. Instead, it's turned face up and assigns or deals damage, is dealt damage, or becomes tapped. Activate only as a sorcery. Hell yeah, they got a replacement effect in there. What an easy to understand card. I don't really know what else to say about like what the card does, so let's move on to the rulings before we get too comfortable and think we understand how this works. The rulings for this card are pretty crazy, or at least some of them are, and they have changed a little bit over the years, as the rules around them have. My favorite current ruling is this one here. If you use the ability to cast a creature card face down, you must keep track of the amount and types of mana you spent on X. If that creature spell is moved from the stack to anywhere other than the battlefield, or the resulting creature leaves the battlefield, or the game ends, the face-down creature is revealed. If the mana cost couldn't be paid by some amount of, or all of, the mana you spent on X, all applicable penalties for casting a card illegally are assessed. That ruling has a bit of a threatening aura to it, and I love it. Don't you dare be a liar, or you're gonna get in trouble. We do not have time to go through every fucking batshit ruling for this card though, since I want to talk about how this card used to be ruled. But there's one other ruling that will be relevant, so check this out. You may not turn a face-down spell face up. You may not turn a face-down permanent face up unless it would have morph while face up, or an effect specifically allows you to turn it face up. Illusionary Mask's ability has you turn a face-down creature face up if it would assign damage, deal damage, be dealt damage, or become tapped, but not for any other reason. For example, if you use Illusionary Mask's ability to cast a black creature face down, you can't turn it face up just because it's being targeted by terror. So that means you can terror a black creature that has been cast with Illusionary Mask, which makes sense because when it's face down, it's a colorless 2/2. This card used to work entirely differently, and the rulings are kind of fucking insane, so let's look at some of the rulings from 94 to see just how wackadoo this whole fucking thing is. So here's what they said about Illusionary Mask in the early days. Since your opponent cannot see what your creatures are, that person may end up casting spells which cannot normally be cast on your creature. For example, Terror on a black creature. In this case, the spell just fizzles out with no effect. In other words, it is a legal use of the spell, but it may fail to do anything. So basically, you put a card face down and your opponent just has to trust that you're not cheating, which is really funny. Imagine, I guess Terror on your face down creature, and they're just like, nah, doesn't work, man. I guess that's pretty fun in its own way, and you can definitely tell that this wasn't designed for like tournament use or anything, but it's still really fucking funny to imagine it in that light. Anyway, moving on. If the creature is controlled by control magic or other means by another player, it remains face down, but the new controller may look at the card. Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. This card does not affect in any way the original spell casting costs, amounts, or colors. It just allows you to spend X additional mana of any color to disguise what the real cost was. Oh yeah, that's really good, yeah. If the mask is destroyed, the creatures still remain face down until one of the conditions of turning it over are met. Okay, so those last couple are just for the most part basic rulings. I like how the one is just like, yeah, this card lets you spend more mana on your creatures. How fun. Very cool. Very good. Strong card. But this next one is really interesting. Only usable on summoned creatures, not on artifact creatures or animated lands. So you originally couldn't use Illusionary Mask on artifact creatures, which is kind of interesting. Animated lands does make sense to not, like, you can't do that because they aren't a spell. They're a land when they come onto the battlefield, and then if they're animated, they change then. Then it says, see the general rules section on special creatures for notes on face down creatures. Oh boy. So in the early days of Magic, they would release a general rule summary sometimes, and then like a card specific list to give you rulings on each card, posted on the Usenet. Normally we would really just need to look at the card summary for this kind of thing, but the face down cards had their own specific rules covered in the general summary, so let's check out the old rules on face down cards. Oh look, up here at the top, it's the ruling that gave Jade Statue haste, which is a feature it had for a little bit because it was an artifact when it came into play, and artifacts could be activated and used on their first turn. That got changed later, but it's pretty neat. Anyway, face down creatures still have any tokens they have on top of the creature. Some creatures are just not very disguisable. That's pretty funny. Face down creatures have their enchantments turned over, but the number of enchantments is still visible. Okay, that's just fucking nonsense. Why is that a rule? Did anyone actually play like that, ever? I'd love to hear your thoughts, because this shit is hilarious. The amount of rules baggage for two of the worst cards to actually use is the funniest shit to me. Also in the rulings, continuous effects on face down creatures used to just happen if it was face up or face down, so if you put down a Goblin King face down, all your goblins still got the bonus, which is really funny. Then the rulings kind of just get philosophical and throw their hands in the air. Like, listen to this shit. How much knowledge you have when dealing with face down creatures is an issue. Some say that they are treated with all the knowledge the player has, and net reps have said this is what should happen. But there is a question of how much people remember, and what really is information. Should I deduce your creature from the mana tapped? Question mark? The most recent answer is that all you really know is that it is a creature, and that all creatures affecting spells may target face down creatures, but they will fizzle if the target is not valid. That's so funny. I've never seen a ruling that was like a question and a suggestion. It's so fantastic. Oh, Illusionary Mask. The funniest thing about this stupid card that sucks is that the more I try to understand it, the less I know about this card for sure. And that's pretty magical if you ask me. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, and that I've probably left you more confused than you were when you started this video. It all feels circular and like nothing leads to any answers, and the more I think about this card, the less I'm sure of anything. What a fucking flavor win. This might be one of the coolest Magic cards of all time, because I could go on about this card, or I could just say, this card does fuck all, and it's not even worth reading, and both of those things are kind of true. I legitimately don't know how to salvage this script, or to give any real structure to this information, so I think we're just gonna move over to the art. I'll do the goodbye at the end thing, and the video will stop, and hopefully you'll all be too baffled by this card to notice that this video was a fucking mess. Illusionary Mask was illustrated by Amy Weber, and this art is fantastic. This art is so fucking silly and hilarious, and I just can't take this card seriously. The whimsical and confusing nature of the art really adds to the ambiance of this card, and I think that's pretty neat. It's also a cool use of orange. Usually a lot of orange is a bit much and kind of looks stupid, but it's handled really well in this art. Yeah, fuck, still, I don't really have anything else to say about this card that isn't like complete nonsense or conspiracy babble. What do you think of this card? Or alternatively, what do you think of my inability to structure a video well enough to make the information palatable? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments, if you can be fucked to take the time. Otherwise, you can like the video if you liked it. You can subscribe if you give a shit. But either way, I hope you have a magical day. Thank you for watching.